again. I just finished putting up well, relatively recently, just finished putting up my Gospel of Mary uh, presentation. And one of the first things that I was immediately asked was, did you read the slides? People won't be able to read them. And so I've been told that it's important that I read the slides, so I'm going to go ahead and do so. I hope this is useful. And frankly, I would really appreciate it if people would say in the comments, is it helpful that I do this? Should I keep reading the slides? Give me a yes. And if it's a waste of time and you're like, no, this is silly, I can read it myself, then let me know that too. A no would be helpful because that way I'll know whether I should be doing this or not. So anyway, all right. So the presentation is titled The Gospel of Mary, Finding the Child of Humanity in Us All. A presentation by Blythe Colley-Collier, PhD, for the class, The Wisdom of Mary Magdalene, November 2025. The first slide reads, Some Modern Interpretations of the Gospel of Mary. 1, it's just another Gnostic heresy. This renders it easily lumped in with all the other apocryphal Gospels and writings. None of them have a stronger or clearer claim to truth than Petrine Christianity, so we can safely ignore them all except as scholarly curiosities. Alternatively, it's clearly just a variant on, or influenced heavily by, Platonism. If Mary just swiped from Plato, then a man inspired this writing, not a woman. And in that case, not only is this not really Christian, but also there's nothing new in it and nothing remarkable about this gospel, which is attributed to a woman. And finally, it's nothing more than watered down Stoicism. Again, if the base ideas were male created, then it's just a woman plagiarizing male philosophical thought again. And Stoicism's not even about religion, from what I can tell. So we go first to the precepts of Gnosticism. The physical world is a flawed, defiled, created by prideful, jealous demiurge, one of the lower divine beings or aeons, created by the remote highest divinity or monad. Redemption occurs when humans obtain gnosis or divine knowledge. Women, rarely mentioned, predominantly chaotic and disobedient. Only the Nag Hammadi texts show women as heroic leaders. And finally, correct behavior, internally motivated, primarily ascetic, especially in diet and sex. I then go to the non-Gnosticism of the Gospel of Mary, and I have the cover of the book that was our predominant text, if I remember correctly. And there's a little Arabic subtitle on the art, which I roughly translated from the Arabic as Mary Magdala, priestess. So to continue with the non-Gnosticism of the Gospel of Mary, there is no radical binarism, such as the Gnostic belief in good versus evil, in the Gospel of Mary. Even sin is not evil, but instead simply missing the mark due to correctable human fallibility. Most importantly, both humans and nature are seen as inherently good, as they are created by the good. The material world is emphatically not the defiled creation of a damaged deity. The next one is Platonism, and I have a graphic of Plato, the 4th century BCE Greek philosopher. And the precepts of Platonism, I'm making them very, very quick. Allegory of the Cave explains Plato's view of inconstant, imitative material world. Platonic forms, unseen, unchanging, grasped only by reason. Highest study by most excellent men only to behold the good. Soul is immutable, sexless, and gives life via reincarnation. Women are ideally taught like men so as to be socially useful. Currently inferior to men physically and intellectually, can only experience common, not heavenly love. Now, this is a table where I compare Platonism, Petrine Christianity, and the Gospel of Mary. So, for example, in Platonism, the material world is inferior to the perfection of the true forms. In Petrine Christianity, the material world is inferior to the perfection of heaven. But in the Gospel of Mary, the material world is good because it was created by the good. Going back to the beginning of this table again, Platonism believes only through reason and logic can a man behold the good. Petrine Christianity says only through male clergy's leadership can an individual even achieve heaven. And the Gospel of Mary says all individuals can reunite with the good. And finally, Platonism says only men should lead and teach. They are physically and intellectually superior to women and slaves. Petrine Christianity says only men should lead and teach. They are physically, intellectually, and spiritually superior to women. And the Gospel of Mary says all who have discovered their child of humanity may lead and teach. There is no hierarchy. So next we go to the precepts of Stoicism. And I have a graphic of a bust of, I hope I'm saying this right, Zeno of Citium, who is considered Stoicism's founder. So Stoicism believes the passions are disturbing, misleading, and unnatural forces in the mind occurring due to a failure to reason correctly. Unreason is the only evil. Reason is using logic to understand logos, or universal reason inherent in all things, processes of nature. Logos, so as to overcome destructive emotions, to be happily passion-free, measure things at their real value, and there will be no fear or anger since others cannot harm you. And the soul, as far as I could tell, is not really addressed. Eudaimonia, which is a well-lived life, is achieved via the practice of virtue, as in prudence, fortitude, temperance, and justice, in accordance with logos. So then, comparing Stoicism and the Gospel of Mary, instead of Stoicism's considering unreason to be the only evil, the Gospel of Mary declares there is no sin or evil inherent to the world. Sin is simply the result of humans' addiction to passion through an adulterous mixing of the spiritual with the material. Control of one's emotions is a likely result of finding one's personal child of humanity, but the Gospel of Mary isn't trying to teach emotional self-control. It is entirely spiritual in nature. And finally, both philosophical traditions suggest that thoughtlessly acting on passion is not wise, but it appears Stoicism is predominantly worried about controlling one's passions, whereas the Gospel of Mary appears to be teaching salvation, as in reunion with the good. So the next slide is what else is in the Gospel of Mary. And we have a circle here with 4 elements on it. At the top is the world is good, sin is a human creation. And then coming down around the circle, union with the good is through one's child of humanity. And at the bottom, it says, add nothing to what the teacher taught. And then coming up again, the good is not wrathful, judging, ruling, or vindictive. And then quotes from Mary to back this up include, for example, Mary page 3, lines through 4. I will note that when I numbered these, I forgot that there are 6 pages at the beginning, I think it's 6, at the beginning of the Gospel of Mary that were just thrown away, which just galls me because what wonderful stuff might have been there. It must have been fascinating if they were that frightened of it. But anyway, so Mary, page 3, lines 3 through 4, it says, there is no such thing as sin. Rather, you yourselves are what produces sin when you act in accordance with the nature of adultery, which is called sin. And then Mary, page 4, lines 2 and lines 5 through 7, it reads, acquire my peace within, this is Jesus, did he say Jesus? No, it says the teacher. This is the teacher speaking in all 3 of these cases that I'm going to give you. And the teacher says, acquire my peace within yourselves, for the child of true humanity exists within you. Follow it. And then the final example is Mary, page 4, lines 9 through 10, which says, do not lay down any rule beyond what I determined for you, nor promulgate law like the lawgiver. So now we have shared themes in the Gospel of Mary and Paul's epistle to the Romans. There are three that I mention. And the first one is adulterous union, which falls under the authority of the law. In Romans 7:2, it reads, "But if her husband should be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man." And the same thing in the Gospel of, similar thing, I should say, in the Gospel of Mary, page 7, lines 6 through 18 is, "When you act in accordance with the nature of adultery." Then the next bit is liberation from the law that binds. And binds is, the usage is, it means the same thing as enslaving. So it's a law that enslaves you. And Romans 7:6 says, "But now we are delivered from the law, for we became dead to that which bound us." And the same thing in Mary, page 4, lines 9 through 10 is, "Do not lay down any rule," for example, the law, "beyond what I determined for you, nor promulgate law like the lawgiver, or else you might be dominated by it." And the final example that in this comparison is the non-existence of sin. In Romans 7:8, it says, "For without the law, sin is dead." And in Mary, page 3, lines 3 through 4, it says, "There is no such thing as sin. Rather, you yourselves are what produces sin." And then to go to common elements with Gospel of Mary in the New Testament, we have the Gospel of Mary saying, "Be on your guard so that no one deceives you," from Mary 4, lines 3 through 4. And in the New Testament, Matthew 24, verses 4 through 5 says, "Take care that none deceive you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ.'" Mark 13:5 says, "Watch out that no one deceives you." Luke 21:8 says, "Watch out that you are not deceived." And then going back to Mary, the next part of that line, "Be on your guard so that no one deceives you," by saying, "Look over here," or "Look over there." That's Mary 4:4 at that point. Luke 17:23 carries on, "Men will tell you, 'Here it is,' or 'There it is.'" And Mary 4:5 concludes with, "For the child of true humanity exists within you." And Luke 17:20 through 21 says, "The kingdom of God does not come with your careful observation, nor will people say, 'Here it is,' or 'There it is,' because the kingdom of God is within you." So the next slide is about the Marys. We have one of those circular examples, graphics. Let's try graphics, sorry. And it starts with a Mary. And as you go around the circle, first it says, "Gave birth to Jesus," then had 7 demons removed by Jesus. Further around a circle, it says, "Anointed a grateful Jesus." Continuing around, was first to witness Jesus' resurrection, and finally, best understood Jesus' teachings. And in the text, I write, "Which Mary? Are the Marys just church-designed, acceptable roles for, quote, good women? For example, sorrowing mother, repentant sinner, devoted companion, etc. Alternatively, are they all actually one woman, with each version of her a mystically depicted level of her spiritual evolution?" Or finally, and this is one that struck me as I was building the circular graphic, are all the Marys a spiritual nod to a more matrifocal thread of the religion? For example, Mary as the demon-possessed child woman, next as the life-giving mother, and finally as the wise companion in a new faith's variant on Maiden Mother Crone. I then go to further intrigued thoughts about the Gospel of Mary. And I point out, if Mary is a character role, is Peter one also? And I give a couple of examples. He acts contradictorily, asking Mary for teachings, and then moments later decrying her. Is this due to having more than one author of the writing, similarly to Paul's epistles? Further, Peter's outbursts are always and invariably corrected by others. But why does Jesus put up with such constantly divisive behavior? Unless Peter is a role within the writings. And finally, Peter's faith is always loudly declared and very poorly demonstrated, to the point that Jesus has to repeatedly either save or rebuke him. So if Mary is a character role, is Peter one also? My next question is, if so, why? What can we learn from this? And my questions become, is the role of Peter a warning of what to watch out for in the ever-changing Christian subculture? Alternatively, is Peter's attack on Mary, which he does constantly, a subtle curse or warning concerning the danger of being deceived by external leaders, such as Peter, or allowing extra rules to be added to the teacher's words, such as Peter constantly was trying to do? And finally, how can we avoid and diffuse such people? Well, this is a fascinating one to me. This is where I was talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus. And this particular mosaic is beautiful one. And basically, the text is titled Mary as Pope with a question mark. And it says, we're not sure if this 650 CE mosaic in St. Venantius Chapel is Mother Mary or the Magdalene. She stands erect directly above the altar and with only Jesus above her. Her arms are upraised to lead in prayer. She is flanked in this big circular, beautiful mosaic. She's flanked by apostles and popes, all facing her. She wears a white pallium. That's the long, thin, you can barely see it at the bottom half of the bottom quarter, maybe. It's got a very thin, it's white, and it's got a very thin blue line at the very bottom. And it says that that's the pallium. I could not make the picture small enough that you could see it correctly without completely blurring her out, because I found the graphic online. But in the original, much larger graphic, which was also kind of blurry to be fair, she wears a white pallium with a red cross. And this is something that is still worn by popes today. And perhaps the most telling comment about this mosaic is it has been deliberately hidden by a Renaissance edition, framing a painting of a very shy, demure-looking Mary holding an infant Jesus in front of her as if he is more important than her. This is the map that I showed you. It's modern and ancient Mesopotamia, site of the travels of Sarah and Abraham of the Old Testament. As I said before, the Zagros Mountains are on the far right. The first red arrow is Ur. Excuse me, let's try that. The lower red arrow is Ur, which is part of modern Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia. Sorry. And then the other arrow is pointing at the Sea of Galilee, which is where Jesus found Peter, now that I think about it. This is the quote from Dr. Carol P. Christ, which I already read to you, but I think it's powerful enough that I'll read it again. It's Dr. Carol P. Christ from her article, Why Women Need the Goddess. The italics are mine, just to be clear. And the quote goes, even people who no longer believe in God or participate in the institutional structure of patriarchal religion still may not be free of the power of the symbolism of God the Father. A symbol's effect does not depend on rational assent, for a symbol also functions on level of the psyche other than the rational. Therefore, symbol systems cannot simply be rejected. They must be replaced. Where there is not any replacement, the mind will revert to familiar structures at times of crisis, bafflement, celebration, or defeat. And this is why I think it's so critically important to pick up something like women's spirituality or some other personal spirituality non-centralized, non-organized religion that where you have someone telling you what to do, rather something where you have to be responsible to yourself. Replace the symbols of patriarchal religion. And then there's this final picture, which is just a lovely, peaceful lake in front of a mountainside with beautiful reflections. I figured to close a picture of nature so that everybody could kind of relax a little bit. It would be nice. So that's what these slides said. I hope this was helpful. Again, please let me know in the comments if this was helpful or if I shouldn't bother. And with that, I will thank you very much, and I will stop recording.